Graham Norton has spent over 2 decades making celebrities comfortable enough to reveal their true selves. His red couch has hosted everyone from Hollywood royalty to actual royalty, from Oscar winners to Olympic champions. But on a Friday evening that would become legendary in British television history, Graham Norton faced something he hadn't encountered in his entire career. A prince so convinced of his own importance that he couldn't recognize charm when it sat across from him. So defensive that every question became an attack. So determined to control the conversation that he forgot he was on someone else's show. Prince Harry walked onto that iconic red couch expecting the usual adoration, the sympathetic questions, the gentle treatment he believed he deserved. He walked off 22 minutes later, verbally outmaneuvered at every turn, his carefully constructed image in ruins, Graham's studio audience applauding not for him, but for the host, who refused to let arrogance masquerade as honesty. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit subscribe and smash that like button. We bring you the most explosive celebrity moments every single week. Now, let's get into what really happened on that famous red couch. The Graham Norton Show studio hummed with its usual Friday night energy. The iconic red couch sat waiting, the drinks were poured, and the audience buzzed with anticipation. Tonight's lineup promised fireworks, though not the kind anyone expected. The familiar theme music played, and Graham bounded onto the stage with his characteristic energy, greeting the audience with genuine warmth before settling into his chair. Welcome, welcome, welcome! We have a wonderful show tonight. Our first guest has been a prince, a soldier, an author, and one of the most talked about people on the planet. Please welcome Prince Harry! The applause was enthusiastic as Harry emerged from backstage. But something in his expression suggested this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. His smile was tight, his jaw set, his posture carrying the tension of someone who'd come prepared for battle rather than banter. He crossed the stage, offered Graham a brief, stiff handshake, and settled onto the red couch with the posture of someone expecting the furniture to be grateful. "Harry! Lovely to have you. How are you?" "I'm fine, Graham." But there was something flat in his tone. A guardedness that seemed premature given that nothing had happened yet. Graham smiled. "Just fine? Not thriving? That seems to be the word you usually use." Harry's eyes narrowed slightly. "I see you've done your research." "That's my job, darling. So, tell us, how's life in California? Sun, surf, celebrities?" Harry shrugged with practiced indifference. "It's home now. Better than being trapped in an institution that never valued me." Graham tilted his head. "Trapped's an interesting word choice. You grew up in palaces with staff attending to your every need. Most people would consider that the opposite of trapped. Most people don't understand what that life actually entails." "That's fair, but you could help them understand by explaining. What specifically made it feel like a trap?" Harry's expression shifted to something almost condescending. "I've written an entire book about it, Graham. Perhaps you should read it." The audience stirred uncomfortably. Graham's smile remained, but his eyes sharpened. "I have read it, cover to cover. That's why I'm asking follow-up questions. That's rather how interviews work." Harry shifted on the couch, his posture becoming defensive. "Your questions feel more like accusations. I've asked how you are and how's California. Those are literally the softest questions possible. If they feel like accusations, perhaps examine why." "Your tone." "My tone is curious and friendly, the same tone I use with everyone. Tom Hanks was here last week and managed to engage without treating me like an adversary. What makes your experience so different?" Harry's jaw tightened. "Tom Hanks isn't constantly attacked by the British media. Neither are you at the moment. You're on a chat show being asked about your life. That's not attack, that's conversation. Though I'm beginning to understand why you might confuse the two." The audience laughed nervously. Harry didn't. "Can we move on?" "Absolutely. Let's talk about your projects. Netflix. You had some big announcements when you signed that deal. Documentaries, a series about polo, various other ventures. How's that all going?" Harry's expression flickered, the first sign of genuine discomfort. "It's going well. We're creating meaningful content. Some of it's been canceled though, hasn't it? The animated series, some documentary concepts. What happened there?" Harry's voice took on an edge. "Projects evolve. That's the nature of the entertainment industry." Graham nodded thoughtfully. Evolve is a generous word for cancelled. The trades used more direct language. They suggested Netflix wasn't getting value for their investment. The trades sensationalize everything. They also report facts, and the fact seems to be that a $100 million deal has produced less than expected. People are curious what went wrong. Harry leaned forward, his expression hardening. Nothing went wrong. Our focus shifted to other priorities. What priorities? Genuine question. You left royal life saying you wanted to be financially independent. You signed a massive deal. The deal seems to be underperforming. What's the explanation? The explanation is that we're not content machines. We produce quality when we have something important to say. But Netflix presumably didn't pay you $100 million to wait until inspiration struck. They paid for content. Content that hasn't materialized. I'm just trying to understand the gap between promise and delivery. Harry's face reddened. You're doing what everyone does, reducing complex creative work to business metrics. Graham smiled. I'm doing what any reasonable person does when someone takes a lot of money and produces not much, asking what happened. That's not reduction. That's accountability. The tension was building now. The audience could feel something shifting in the room. Let's try something else, Graham said smoothly. The Spotify situation. That ended quite dramatically. A senior executive called you and Meghan grifters. How did that feel? Harry's expression turned icy. It felt like character assassination from someone who didn't understand our vision. What was your vision? Because from the outside, it looked like you were paid millions for a podcast that produced 12 episodes over 3 years. That's not vision, that's barely output. Quality over quantity, Graham. Quality requires actual product to judge. 12 episodes barely registers as a podcast. Most podcasters produce that in a few months. What were you doing with the rest of the time? Harry stood up slightly, then forced himself to sit back down. I don't need to justify my work ethic to you. You don't need to justify anything. But you did take millions of dollars from companies that expected deliverables. When those deliverables don't appear, questions follow. That's not persecution, that's commerce. You're twisting everything. I'm describing observable facts. You signed deals, you underdelivered. The deals ended badly. Those are facts. If the facts feel like twisting, maybe the problem is with the facts, not my description of them. Graham took a sip of his wine, his posture relaxed but his attention focused. Let's talk about family. How are things with William? Harry's entire body tensed. I don't discuss my family. You've discussed your family extensively. In your book, your documentary, multiple interviews. Why is this interview different? Because I've learned that anything I say gets twisted. By who? I'm asking a simple question. How are things with your brother? You can say good, bad, complicated, or nothing at all. But claiming you don't discuss family after writing a book about them is a bit rich. The book was about my experience. Your experience with your family, which you discussed in detail. Intimate detail, actually. Things many people thought should have remained private. And now you're invoking privacy? That's quite a shift. Harry pointed at Graham, his hand trembling slightly. You don't understand the context. Then help me understand. That's what interviews are for, but every time I ask a question, you act like I'm attacking you. I'm not attacking you. I'm asking you to explain things you've publicly said. If you can't explain them, that's not my problem. That's yours. The audience murmured in agreement. Harry looked around, seeming to realize for the first time that the room wasn't on his side. Graham pressed forward, his charm never wavering but his questions becoming sharper. Let's talk about Meghan. How is she? Harry's expression closed off completely. I'd prefer not to discuss my wife. Graham's eyebrows rose theatrically. Really? But she's central to your entire narrative. Your love story, your departure from royal life, your new chapter in America. It's all joint. How can we discuss your life without discussing her? We can focus on my individual work. Which is what? Your foundation is joint. Your media appearances are joint. Your brand is Sussex, not just Harry. What exactly is your individual work separate from her? Harry paused, seemingly unable to answer. Graham continued gently. I'm not trying to trap you. I'm genuinely curious. You've positioned yourself as half of a partnership. When you remove the partnership from discussion, what's left? I have my own identity. I'm sure you do, but you haven't shown it to the public. Everything we know about your post-royal life involves Meghan. So when you say you don't want to discuss her, you're essentially saying you don't want to discuss your entire public existence. Harry's voice sharpened dangerously. There are rumors I'd like to address since you're bringing her up. Which rumors? The divorce rumors. They're completely false. We're stronger than ever. Graham nodded. Good. Glad to hear it. Though I notice you brought up divorce. I just asked how she was doing. Why did your mind go to divorce? Harry stiffened. Because that's what the tabloids are saying. I'm not the tabloids. I asked a simple question. You escalated to divorce. That's interesting. It's not interesting. It's defensive. Because I'm tired of what? Of people asking about your marriage? Because you've invited those questions. The Netflix documentary, the interviews, the book, all of it centers on your relationship. You can't make your marriage the core of your brand and then complain when people ask about it. We're not a brand. You literally trademarked your names. You have a production company. You license your image. How is that not a brand? Harry stood up abruptly, the movement startling the audience. This is exactly what I expected. Another British host determined to tear me down. Graham didn't stand. He just looked up at Harry with an expression of mild curiosity. Tear you down? I've asked about your projects, your family, and your wife. Those are standard interview topics. If they feel like tearing down, maybe your foundation isn't as solid as you think. My foundation is fine. Is it? Because you seem quite fragile right now, upset by basic questions, defensive about your own choices, unable to discuss your marriage without leaping to divorce denials no one asked for. That's not the behavior of someone who's thriving. I am thriving. You keep saying that word, but thriving people don't get angry when asked about their lives. They don't treat every question as an attack. They don't flee interviews when things get uncomfortable. Harry's face contorted with barely suppressed rage. I'm not fleeing. You're standing up, preparing to walk out because I asked standard interview questions. That's fleeing. It's elegant fleeing, perhaps, but fleeing nonetheless. You've been hostile from the start. I've been charming from the start. It's rather my thing. Ask anyone who's been on this couch. I'm the friendliest interviewer in British television. The fact that friendly feels hostile to you says everything about where you are mentally. Harry grabbed his water glass, then set it down without drinking. I came here in good faith. Did you? Because from where I'm sitting, you came here with a list of topics you won't discuss, an attitude that suggests everyone is your enemy, and no apparent willingness to engage with anything that doesn't go exactly your way. That's not good faith. That's bad preparation. I don't need to be lectured. I'm not lecturing, I'm observing. There's a difference. And what I observe is someone who's deeply unhappy pretending to be thriving, someone who's defensive about everything because he knows his narrative doesn't hold up to scrutiny. My narrative holds up perfectly. Then why can't you answer simple questions? How's California? Should be an easy answer. How are your projects? Should inspire enthusiasm if they're going well. How's Meghan? Should be a chance to talk about someone you love. Instead, every question has been met with hostility. That's not a narrative holding up. That's a narrative falling apart. Harry pointed at Graham, his hand shaking. You're going to regret this interview. Graham smiled. That's very royal of you. Threats. Is that what you learned in the palace before you fled it? I didn't flee. You left, rapidly, after claiming you had no choice. Now you live in California, doing occasional media appearances where you complain about media. The irony isn't subtle, Harry. It never has been. Harry moved toward the edge of the set, then turned back for one final confrontation. You know what your problem is, Graham? You think being witty is the same as being intelligent. You think making people laugh gives you the right to make them uncomfortable. Graham nodded. I think discomfort is often where truth lives, and you've been extremely uncomfortable since you sat down, which suggests there's quite a lot of truth we haven't touched. There's no hidden truth. Then why so defensive? Why treat every question as an attack? Why bring up divorce when I asked how your wife was? Why refuse to discuss projects you're supposedly proud of? Why flee an interview that's barely begun? I'm not fleeing. I'm refusing to participate in a hostile environment. This is the friendliest show on British television. We have a live band. We serve wine. The lighting is warm. The audience is supportive. If this feels hostile, you might want to examine what hospitality feels like, because you seem to have forgotten." Harry's voice dropped to something cold. "You'll regret this." "You keep saying that, but regret is for people who've done something wrong. I've asked you questions about your own public statements. That's my job. If you can't handle the job being done, that's a you problem, not a me problem." Harry stared at Graham for a long moment. Something flickered behind his eyes. Anger, certainly, but also something that might have been recognition. The uncomfortable awareness that he was losing, had been losing since he walked in. "This interview is over." "Is it? We've barely started. I had questions about your charity work, your plans for the future, your relationship with your father. All potentially positive topics. But you've made it impossible to have a normal conversation. Impossible because you won't stop attacking. I've asked questions. You've attacked yourself with your answers. There's a difference." Harry turned and walked toward the exit. At the edge of the set, he paused. "You're pathetic. This whole show is pathetic." Graham raised his glass. "And yet you agreed to be on it. Cheers to that." The audience laughed. Harry's face went red, then pale. He walked off the set without another word. His footsteps echoed through the suddenly quiet studio until a door slammed in the distance. Graham sat in the silence for a moment, then turned to face his audience with a bemused expression. "Well, that's certainly not how I expected tonight to go," he shrugged. "I thought we might discuss his charities, his life in California, perhaps a few amusing anecdotes about adjusting to American culture. Instead, we got whatever that was." The audience laughed nervously. "Here's the thing about interviews. They're supposed to be conversations. Give and take. I ask, you answer. We build something together. What we just witnessed wasn't conversation, it was confrontation. And he brought the confrontation with him. I just responded to it." He took a sip of his wine. "I'm not going to trash him, that's not my style. But I will say this. If you come on someone's show expecting to control the conversation, you should probably choose a different show. I've been doing this too long to be managed. And I've been doing this too well to pretend questions are attacks just because someone doesn't like them." He looked directly into the camera. "He's welcome back anytime. Genuinely. I'd love to have the conversation we were supposed to have tonight. But if he comes back, I hope he comes ready to actually engage, not perform. Because performances are boring, and I don't do boring." The audience applauded warmly. The interview lasted 22 minutes before Harry walked out. Its impact would last considerably longer. For Graham Norton, it was a demonstration of what he'd always known. That charm and directness could coexist. That friendliness didn't require acceptance of nonsense. That asking questions with a smile was still asking questions. For Prince Harry, it was something else. Proof that his media strategy didn't work on everyone. Evidence that some interviewers couldn't be managed, no matter how carefully the talking points were prepared. Some couches are comfortable. Others reveal everything you're trying to hide. And Graham Norton's red couch had been revealing truths for over 2 decades. It wasn't about to stop for a prince. What do you think? Was Graham too harsh? Or did Harry deserve every question? Who would you like to see on the red couch next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video to help it reach more people. Subscribe to our channel for more explosive celebrity moments.